first thing, we're going to talk about powers and roots. We have to know what I'm referring to. So if I'm saying power functions and root functions, a power function is something where you have x to a power. Right, so that's like x squared, x cubed, x to the fourth, so on. Those are power functions. A root function is something like f of x equals x to the 1 over n power. If you have an exponent where it's 1 over something, that can be written as a radical. So the denominator becomes the index, so it's like the nth root of x. So we are looking at problems where we either have x to a power or we have x under a radical. Those are the two types of problems we're solving. We've seen this before to some extent. We've talked about x squared, x cubed, the square root of x, the cube root of x. So we've talked about some of these. We are just going to be working on simplifying some properties of exponents and solving equations with them today. For the root function, we have to be able to consider the domain. And there's two cases. In odd roots, so if it's a cube root, a fifth root, a seventh root, does it matter what kind of number is underneath it? No. So it's just the domain will be negative infinity to positive infinity. In even roots, we know that the thing under the radical has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, we can't have, if we have the square root of a negative number, we know that gives us what? If I said like the square root of negative 4, that gives us an I. So if we're dealing with real numbers, odd roots can have anything under the radical. Even roots have to have positive numbers under the radical. Any questions? So, all right, we're going to start with just some basic simplifications, making sure we can evaluate these things. So if I said the cube root of 27, what is that? 3. Because 3 to the third is 27. Right? A negative fourth root of 10,000. All right, the negative on the outside just stays. Could you, if you don't know the fourth root of 10,000, could you use your calculator to get it? You guys all know how to use your calculator and put in fourth roots? So try it, and if you can't figure it out on your calculator, let me know and I'll help you. What do we get? So our answer is negative 10, because we have a negative in front. All right. The cube root of negative 216. Is it a problem that there's a negative under the radical? No, because it's an odd root. What is the cube root of negative 216? Negative 6. Okay. What's going to happen if we have the fourth root of a negative? it's going to have an I in it. What is the fourth root of 81?
3i.
All right, we can do fractions as well. You're basically just doing the cube root of the top and bottom. So the cube root of 125, 5, and the cube root of 512. That is a good question. So just get 5/8. All right. What if I said, well, last one here. I have a negative out in front, so I have a negative on my answer. Then what's the fifth root of negative 243? So two negatives make a positive, and we just get positive 3. Now, could I have evaluated all of those just by plugging them in my calculator? Yes. But I want to make sure we kind of understand what we're doing before I throw variables in it. Any issues there? Let's look at a couple. All right, if I want you to simplify these without just plugging it in the calculator, so kind of making sure we understand what it's asking us. If I said 16 to the 3/4 power, how would I write that with a radical?
4 equals 16. Third power.
Okay. You can do either the third power or the fourth root first. I think it's probably easier just to do the fourth root. What is the fourth root of 16? 2. So 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2, 8. T. So if I wanted the cube root of negative 64 to the fourth, what is the cube root of negative 64? So it's saying what to the third power equals negative 64? And then what is a negative 4 to the fourth? If you put it in the calculator, look, the negative 4 is in parentheses, the fourth is on the outside.
256.
C. So we have to simplify this. Exponent rules. If you have a power to a power, what do you do with those? Multiply. What is 3/4 times 2? 6/4 or 3/2. How do I write that with a radical? What is the square root of 25? And 5 to the third, so 5 times 5 times 5. Okay, last one, negative 8 to the 5/3. So, if I write that with a radical, that's the cube root of negative 8 to the 5th. What is the cube root of negative 8? Negative 2. What is negative 2 to the 5th power? All right. Any issues so far? So we understand how to evaluate these, how to go from a fraction exponent to radicals. So let's try some then with variables in them. Use rational exponents. That means use fraction exponents to rewrite these things. All right. So if you have the fifth root of x, how would you write that with a rational exponent? This is like an exponent of 1, so it would be x to what power? 1 over 5. Times. Okay, this is the square root of x cubed. So if there's no number out here, it's understood to be a 2. So that would be x to the 3 halves. Right. Exponent rules. If you are multiplying and the x is written each time, what do you do with your exponents? Add them. So you can use a calculator if you need to. You have to do the 1/5 plus the 3 halves. 17 over 10. So that's our final answer. X to the 17 tenths. All right. I'm actually going to switch. I'm going to do this one next. This is going to be my B. Okay, this whole thing is under a cube root. A cube root is what kind of power? 1 over 3. Inside it, I have an x squared times the 7th root of x. So that would be x to the inside this parentheses, these x's are multiplied. So what do we do with our exponents? Add them. So 2 plus 1 over 7 gives us 15 over 7. Then I have x to the 15/7 to the 1/3. If it's a power to a power, what do we do with the exponents? Multiply. So 15 over 7 times 1 over 3. We should end up with x to the 5/7 power. I want you guys to try these two. So how do we rewrite x to the, or the cube root of x to the 4th? Okay, and then the 4th root of x to the 5th would be x to the, so then if we're multiplying, we add the exponents, and we get good. All right, D, the whole thing is under a 6th root, which is a 1/6 power. Inside we have an x times the cube root of x squared, so x to the 2/3. If there's no exponent written, what do we assume it is? So inside, the x's are written both times, so we have to add the exponent. So 1 plus 2/3 is 5/3. So if you have x to the 5/3 to the 1/6, then what do we do with the exponents? So you should get x to the 5 over 18 power. All right, are we okay with simplifying those? Good. Any questions? All right, I have like 3-ish slides left. Let's talk about finding the domains of a couple. So if I asked you to find the domain of this one is a square root. So if it's an even radical, we said the thing under the radical has to be positive. So that has to be greater than or equal to 0. So just the piece under the radical. It doesn't matter if I have something on the end or something multiplied, that won't change the domain. It's just what's underneath the radical. So then if I solve that, I get 4x is greater than or equal to negative 12. If I divide by 4, x is greater than or equal to negative 3. How would we write that as an interval? Draw yourself a number line. Here's negative 3. Greater than goes to the left. Yeah. Yep. You have to decide left or right. Equal to means bracket, so it's just bracket. Negative 3 to All right. B, the cube root of negative 8x plus 8. If it's an odd root, what's my domain automatically? If this number outside the radical, the index, if that's an odd number, it's automatically negative infinity to infinity. You don't have to solve anything. I'm going to do one more. What if I told you to find the domain of this using a graph? All right, several of you have graphing calculators there. I want you to plug in the square root of 36 minus x squared. Grab a graphing calculator if you need to. See what that graph looks like. If you don't have a graphing calculator, get one. What's the graph look like? So it looks something like this. Okay, where's this value? Negative 6. Where's this one? Positive 6, because negative 6 and 6 make it 0 inside. So my domain, it only exists between those, so negative 6 to positive 6. Anything that I would give you on test or quiz would be like A or B, but I do think your Math Excel has one where it asks you to look at a graph and decide it. So we do have that option. All right, are we okay with finding domains? Okay. Last type of problem I want to look at. I want to explain how the graph of y equals the square root of 4x plus 12 can be obtained from the graph y equals the square root of x. Remember way back when we did our parent functions and transformations, you know, we knew what the square root of x looked like. You don't have to draw this on your paper, but we knew the square root of x looked like this. If I were trying to graph this by transformations, I would need to figure out what my transformations were. So let's start. 4x plus 12, what can I take out of both of those? Okay. So I could do my transformations here, but horizontal stretching and shrinking was really hard. Could we do the square root of 4? What is it? So a 2 would come out. And just leave it with the square root of x plus 3. So we just did some algebra to simplify this. So now my transformations. Remember, if you multiply a number on the outside, that's a vertical stretch. So a vertical stretch by 2, it would make it get taller. It's like taking your y's times 2. What does a plus 3 on the inside mean? Good. So taking the opportunity to review a couple things here. We rewrote it first because horizontal stretching and shrinking is hard. So we factored out what we could, simplified, and then we were able to describe our transformation. One more, folks. So cube root, we know that's like the sideways chair. If I were trying to do transformations, I would have to simplify this. Negative 8x plus 8, what could I take out? 8 or negative 8, right? I prefer my x to be positive, so let's factor out a negative 8. Can we do the cube root of negative 1? Or sorry, of negative 8? Yes, what is cube root of negative 8? So a negative 2 comes out, so it's negative 2 cube root of x minus 1. All right, what does a negative do? It's making your y's negative, so it flips it over the x-axis. What does the 2 do? And what does a minus 1 on the inside? What if it was like what if it had a minus 3 out here? What would that do? Down 3. Anything outside the radical would move up and down. All right. Any questions about our transformations? So, we have quite a bit of time right now. There is a Math Excel assignment. You should have enough time to get that done. I will also hand back tests and come around and